everyone, how's it going? It's Kevin again with the Daily Bit. Today we're doing Daily Bit number 69. It's the 69th edition of the newsletter. And today's title is Wanchain now on Binance, because appropriately Wanchain was listed on Binance at 2 a.m. this morning. So huge news hit the market. There were a lot of people excited for Wanchain. A lot of people were trying to purchase Wanchain, but obviously until Wanchain hits an exchange, can't really do that. So Binance kind of came out of the woodwork here, caught a lot of people off guard. So good news all around. But again, this is only one of many events that we're going to be looking at today. So let's hop into it. And we're doing a PowerPoint today. I think that's going to be a little easier to view for everybody. And again, we're going to follow the same steps as we were doing yesterday. However, to start, disclaimer: I'm not a professional advisor. This should not be professional advice. I am an amateur investor. I'm a 24-year-old that is doing crypto, writing news about crypto, and anything I say that might be construed as financial advice is not. It's my personal opinion. Do not take that and go out into the market and trade on it. Anyways, now that we have that out of the way, our table of contents, again, it's the same as yesterday, except we have a couple new titles in there. Our word on the street, today we have, again, a huge week for Binance. They had a Wanchain, and then there's also some news coming out of Malta this morning, but we'll get to that, of course. JP Morgan, they may be spinning off their blockchain solution Quorum. For Where's Blockchain, your Vente Solate was grown by. We're going to look at Starbucks and see what they're doing with blockchain. What else you should read today? Again, just a couple of stories that we threw together and thought would be helpful for you guys to read. For Bulls and Bears, Australia and the UK have a fintech agreement. They just upped that, so we're going to take a look and see what's going on there. For our Bears, the CFTC was looking for funding and their budget. We're going to take a look at that and see why Giancarlo and other members of the CFTC think that there's no cash flow to cover their expenses and their role as a watchdog in the space. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with education and take a look at stealth addresses, specifically with Monero. So, tweet of the day. This is coming from a Princeton professor. His Twitter handle is Random Walker, and he really just threw together a couple buzzwords in the space, and it went viral, so we figured that this would be a cool thing to send out to you guys. Personally, I guess big data, everybody knows big data is just beta. Big data is just data. Blockchain is a database, a distributed ledger technology per se. Crypto is cryptocurrency. A lot of people get confused with crypto being cryptic. But again, you guys can read through this yourselves. But again, just something interesting to look at. Tweet of the day. There you go. Word on the street. Again, starting up with Binance. There were a couple events that Binance got hit with yesterday. And it started off in the morning. Everybody woke up and saw that Bitcoin was crashing. Nobody knew why. It turns out this Japanese newspaper named Nikkei, again, if I mispronounced that, my apologies, they accused Binance of having to shutter their operations in Japan. The reason being, they claimed that Japanese employees that worked, Binance employees that were based in Japan were operating without the consent of the government. This turned out to be hogwash. Binance came out, specifically Changpeng Zhao, the CEO, who, by the way, he does an awesome job. He's always on top of this stuff. He's always talking to the community. So props to you, Changpeng. You're really doing great. Though he did tweet out that Binance is in discussion with Japan's regulators, but that's no reason to be alarmed. That's normal discussion. And he also noted it's really it's interesting that a newspaper would be alerted by Japanese regulators instead of the exchange. So you just pointed out kind of a flaw in the logic of the newsletter. And again, here I go again, a newspaper. And Nikkei is a really, really large publication. They have more daily circulations than the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, according to Wikipedia and their source there. So that's something interesting too. This huge giant came out and threw these claims about Binance, which, I mean, Changpeng just swatted down. So really cool on him. Keep the people, I guess, comfortable, not panicking. The second thing that came out was Binance released a Mac client. So basically, this is an interface. It's a software that you can download if you have a Mac, and it allows you to trade off of the software from your computer. So anybody that normally would be logging on to Binance.com, you don't have to do that anymore. You can do it straight from your desktop. There are a couple lags. People online have been saying that the experience is kind of laggy for them, but again, it's a first cut product. I mean, it's going to get better. Binance, the fact that they're continuing to churn out content and also just keep on top of everything that's being thrown at them, really shows that the exchange is willing to work with the community and also just kind of keep everybody up to date. So that's great. And then finally, the last piece of news that we just mentioned, Wanchain was added about 2 a.m. Eastern time. The market went crazy. Everybody, again, they've been trying to get their hands on Wanchain. It's a smart contract blockchain platform with privacy protection and cross-chain capabilities. Basically, what that means is that you're able to transfer coins from Bitcoin's blockchain to Ethereum's blockchain, vice versa. There's a lot of flexibility with Wanchain, and they have a really interesting roadmap if you want to take a look at that. But again, I mean, the issuance price was around 34 cents, and it's shot up since. It's already done a 10x. So a lot of people think it could do 100x. I mean, who knows? Again, this is crypto. This Wanchain could plummet. I don't know. We're in a sliding market, so again, like, invest at your own risk. If you want to buy some WAN coins, you can do it on Binance. For now, that's really all you can do. Until then, wait for other exchanges if it gets listed elsewhere. But again, it's really growing pretty quickly, which is interesting. Moving forward, this is the news that came out this morning with Binance. They're adding an exchange to Malta. It's going to be a fiat to crypto exchange, and I believe this is the Malta Prime Minister welcoming Binance to the country. "Quote unquote, we aim to be the global trailblazers in the regulation of blockchain-based businesses and the jurisdiction of quality and choice for world-class fintech companies." Again, that's awesome. Malta, the fact that they're so open to adding Binance into the country just shows that there are governments that are actually willing to work with exchanges. The issue with the United States, it's not that there's an issue, it's that all these exchanges that aren't based in the US, so outside of Bittrex, actually don't quote me on Bittrex, I'm not sure if they're based in the US or not, but Coinbase, Gemini, those exchanges are in the US, they're fine, but everything else that's overseas, the government is still kind of grappling with how they're going to handle that, how they're going to treat that, because the fact that they don't fall under US jurisdiction means that they're able to get away with some stuff that U.S. regulators may not comply with. One of those being no USD tokens on there. There's exchanges that are using Tether, and as we've seen from BitMEX research reports, those are generally pretty sketchy. So until there's more clarity there, it might be more difficult to kind of have the U.S. government actually kind of waving some of these exchanges over, similar to Malta. Moving forward, JPM's blockchain solution, again, Quorum. It might be taking flight. Again, this isn't confirmed, but several articles came out saying that JPM was in early stages of a discussion of perhaps spinning off the platform to make it a standalone entity, from what I saw. And again, this is, I guess, Ethereum's cousin for institutional investors and institutions. I guess the logic behind that is Ethereum is open sourced. It's a permissionless blockchain, whereas Quorum is permission. It's more centralized. There are people that, I guess, bodies that control the nodes on the system, whereas Ethereum's is much more decentralized. Again, there are a couple perks to Quorum, same as Ethereum, but there's privacy and transparency on there. There's transaction level privacy where you're able to kind of have that those transactions cloaked one to another, and then on top of that you have network-wide transparency, so you have the immutable. This is where the immutable blockchain comes into play, and the public ledger. For performance and throughput, they're able to process institutional transaction volume, so any companies that are looking to use Quorum, which by the way, if you didn't notice, is free, they're able to handle any volume that's really thrown at them. I believe it's up to a couple hundred transactions per second, so I mean Bitcoin's is about 7 or so. So once Bitcoin scales, that's obviously going to get better. But right now, Quorum really is pretty advantageous due to that throughput. And again, the permissioning governments, there's a permission group of known participants. So unlike Bitcoin, unlike Ethereum, you really don't know. Really don't know who the guy is sitting next to you. For Quorum, everybody knows who everybody is. It's all packed amongst banks, specifically JP Morgan, since right now this is still their baby. Though again, as we'll see, they might spin it off. And also, the consensus algorithms are different with Quorum. It's different than proof of work, which, as everybody knows, that's I guess, pretty problematic in the sense that it takes a lot of electricity. There are a couple mining towns throughout the world that are banning proof of work, or not banning proof of work, but they're banning Bitcoin and cryptocurrency miners from entering the country and mining and using their resources, because people have kind of stepped back and realized that maybe we don't want to have these people using all this electricity. It's great for the economy right now, but down the road, maybe we're gonna regret what we did with the environment. So again, these new consensus algorithms, I'm personally not sure what's going on here. This is definitely something that I'm going to do more research on for the consensus algorithms here. But again, it looks like Quorum's pretty diversified there, so I'm assuming that's going to lead to increased flexibility for them. And again, if they step out from JP Morgan's shadow, it's not exclusively a financial sector product for blockchain here. Quorum could be used for multiple industries, from healthcare to retail to online payments, whatever it might be. I mean, there's really a lot of leeway here. So just because it's under JP Morgan doesn't necessarily mean that it's only used for the financial sector. So again, if this spin-off does happen, I would expect that the reason for it is so other companies, other banks, also just so there's no puppeteering going on with JP Morgan. They can kind of see it as a standalone entity that runs on its own and really does have more potential elsewhere. And again, a JPM spokesman said, quote, Quorum has become an extremely successful enterprise, even beyond financial services, and they're excited about the potential. So again, maybe it's time for Quorum to graduate, go on its own, say bye to dad for a little bit, and I don't know, make a name for itself. Okay, so for Where's Blockchain, we're going to take a look at Starbucks and what they're doing with. It's called a bean to cup initiative, or a bean to customer, but basically, whenever you walk into Starbucks, the ambiance, I mean, it blows you away right away. It's a community. All the tables are very, very close together. You're encouraged to talk to the other people that are in there. It's a warm, welcoming place. And again, this all goes back to their mission statement. Starbucks wants to inspire and nurture the human spirit, one person, one cup, and one neighborhood at a time. But the issue with that is everybody in the Starbucks understands what's going on. They all know who each other are, but you really don't know who's making the actual coffee. I personally don't. I have Starbucks from time to time, and I have never had any inclination of the exact person that's made my coffee. Not that you have to, but the fact that Starbucks brand really does they really play out stories, and they really try to draw people into the community aspect and the community feel by bringing out these stories about their employees, the people they work with. So it makes sense that they would try to do an initiative to kind of bring like the spotlight onto the coffee farmers and the farmers that produce their coffee. And again, Starbucks has already done this. They have a couple of programs where they've donated substantial amounts of money and also trees to make sure that their producers have the materials and resources that they need to make sure that they're going to be producing this great quality coffee day in and day out. So again, by 2025, Starbucks hopes to have 100 million coffee trees for their farmers. And again, a lot of other programs going on. And again, so Bean to Cup, they're looking at 3 programs right now where Starbucks is going to launch a pilot. One of them is going to be in Rwanda, the other Costa Rica, and the third in Colombia. And again, this goes to show how much Starbucks works with their brands. Everybody is on the same page here in terms of sustainability, working together, transparency. Starbucks is like a brother, it's like a friend, according to Costa Rica. So again, it's not a commodity for these people, it's a way of life. If you look at Starbucks' website, there's all these communities. Coffee grows the economy, coffee boosts the economy. So having a figure like Starbucks come in and say, hey, look, like we want to use the blockchain to make your lives better and also get your story out there to the people. It's a really cool thing, and obviously it's great to see that these programs are getting involved with it. So, I mean, we're definitely going to keep an eye on this. I'm sure that Starbucks is going to be successful with it. I mean, there's a lot of other companies that are rolling out blockchain initiatives, so we'll see where it goes, and ultimately, again, the taste of coffee eventually disappears off the palate, but what never leaves you are the stories of the people and the places. So again, if you can go to a Starbucks and buy a venti, mocha, latte, cinnamon, whatever, and find out that that came from a Costa Rican family that's been making coffee and growing coffee trees for 10, 15 years, and that's helped pay for their child's education, and they've gone off to college to do great things. It also warms your heart. The coffee warms your heart too, but again, it's all about the story at the end of the day and having good coffee, which Starbucks does by making their people through the supply chain feel like they're part of the brand. So I think this is going to do a really good job of making that possible. Now, what else you should read today? Again, just a couple stories. BlackRock produced a research report for a decentralized payment system, Request Network. Again, I'm really interested in this because for some of my writing, obviously the newspaper is more just like really just scraping the surface here, but ultimately I'd like to do more in-depth pieces of reports about the space. So I'm going to look to BlackRock and these other institutions that are banging out these research reports, not just a run-of-the-mill person that's coming into the space saying, I want to do this. I'm going to be looking at these institutions and getting an idea of how they're preparing their reports, what their investors are looking at, what their managers are looking at. So again, I think this is a great model. And also it shows that you can make reports for cryptocurrencies, even though there's really not the same valuation metrics behind them as equities. I mean, these funds are still putting together reports, and it's pretty intellectual. It's pretty thought-provoking. It's interesting. Bank accounts may be wiped out in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. There's a top executive at Deutsche Bank that passed along this theory. And again, it all ties into blockchain, where people were thinking that because there's immutable ledgers on the blockchain, everything's public, and there's a lot more security than a standard bank, then you would be able, there's no need for a bank account at that point. And Deutsche's executive does say if that happens, then they're going to have to change their approach, because as bankers, the role of bankers is to control accounts and monitor accounts. If there's no bank accounts, then you have to change your business model. So again, let's check back in 5, 10, 15, 20 years and see where they go with that. Snowden does not think Bitcoin's going to stick around. This makes sense. He's a huge privacy junkie, as everybody knows. That's why he spilled the beans with all of our privacy concerns down in the States. But again, because Bitcoin has a public ledger that's synonymous, whereas Monero, for example, is more privacy focused, and we're going to get to Monero later on in the presentation. But because Bitcoin isn't completely private, Snowden says that's going to be enough for me, dog. I'm out. I really don't think Bitcoin is going to stick around in the future. Again, who knows? He's one of millions of people looking at this technology. So, again, just an opinion. ETHLend is a decentralized lending application, and they just surpassed 6,000 Ethereum in daily lending volume. Again, this is all going on the blockchain. So, for 3 months ago, if we were looking at something like this, and people were really wondering if you were able to transact and transfer actual value on the blockchain. It's being done with these lending platforms, with CryptoKitties, with any other games that are going to come out on the blockchain. It's happening, and it's really interesting to see that kind of come to light. And we'll see where ETHLend goes. We'll see where these other projects go. Again, it's all about what real world use cases you can bring to society. And if people can take loans out on the blockchain and it's cheaper, safer, quicker than other methods, they're going to do it. Vice interviewed Overstock CEO Patrick Byrne. Byrne is a huge Bitcoin guy. He's a huge blockchain guy. He's been involved for a while. So again, it's a video, unlike most of these articles we go and post here for what else you should read. So if you'd rather just have your eyeballs follow along and listen to an interview, then by all means check that out. BitMEX Research, they released a report comparing transaction speeds of SegWit and Bitcoin Cash. This is interesting because as exchanges started to adopt SegWit, this goes back to the whole debate between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. It's the block size. Do we need to increase the block size of Bitcoin to 8 MBs, or are we good right now where we stand? As these exchanges are adopting SegWit, BitMEX did find that the transactions are going through quicker on Bitcoin than Bitcoin Cash right now, so it defeats the purpose. Bitcoin Cash really, based off of that notion, is kind of worthless. And again, I'm not taking shots here. I'm not saying that Bitcoin Cash isn't great. But again, just based off of the report, if you did have to compare one to the other, Bitcoin Cash is slower than Segwit right now. So that's really just what the facts are saying. Time for Bulls and Bears. All right, so right now we're looking at Australia and UK. They had a collaboration for fintech where they wanted to promote the space with each other. They amped up that cooperation agreement to an enhanced cooperation agreement. And again, this is the Australian Securities Investment Corporation, ASIC, not like the miners, and the UK Financial Conduct Authority, FCA. And they proposed two main things. This is at least what I thought was the most valuable here. But they have innovation hubs where basically each of these countries has a hub where they have all their fintech companies in there operating, talking amongst another, and just kind of bouncing ideas off each other's heads, off the walls in the innovation hub. And they're saying, look, let's join forces, kind of set up like a referral system where they can talk amongst each other across international lines. Makes sense. The Australian innovation hubs would speak with the UK hubs, and everybody would kind of help each other with any problems or solutions that they're looking towards in the space. Again, the goal here is just to crank up growth in fintech, and the hubs could do that. Also, another option is a global sandbox. Well, so this is basically like a sandbox on BitMEX, where if you don't have an actual account, you can go into sandbox mode. Most people I know personally have a sandbox, and they haven't traded on BitMEX personally. The main reason for that is it's banned in the United States. But if you do have a sandbox program, you're able to test all your products, your services, and strategy with the real market and real customers. So again, this is something that the FCA has already rolled out for Product Innovate. I believe that's the name of their program. So they've already gotten real results with the companies that are working for this. And again, if they can get this going and off the ground for fintech in these countries, it really could help with innovation and adoption. So again, something to look at. And there are a couple of other things, but again, check our website. We have all those laid out in the newspaper. So for the CFTC, if you're not aware, if you don't follow traditional markets, a spending bill was just proposed to make sure that the government doesn't have another lockup period before September. So this $1.3 trillion is going to keep the government running through September. Just as an aside, I don't really keep up with Capitol Hill stuff and just general politics, but these spending bills are kind of scary and alarming. If we have to crank out 1.3 trillion just to keep us going because there's not agreements. But again, I don't know. That's my 2 cents. It's probably off because I don't really look into government. Anyways, the CFTC's budget was $250 million, and we all know the CFTC, they have a huge responsibility to make sure that the markets are running properly. Giancarlo has his hands full, especially because crypto is blowing up. Blockchain is blowing up. We saw in the joint economic report that blockchain had their own chapter. It's specifically talking about cybersecurity risk and how blockchain is going to come and fix that. So naturally, Giancarlo said, "Hey, look, Congress, I need more money because there's so much going on here that I'm not able to do it with $250 million." And we're going to see on the next slide what previous duties the CFTC had and what they also tacked on. But again, he proposed 281.5. That comes out to a 12 or 13% uptick from what there was initially. The new budget after the spending bill, it was deducted 0.4%, which really doesn't seem like that much. But when you're asking for a 13% boost, it's kind of a slap in the face. It's salt in the wound. Also, especially when you look at the SEC's budget, they didn't even request. Well, they requested a balance, but I guess for some reason Congress gave them 3% more than what was initially requested. So if I'm the CFTC, I'm basically this lady in this meme. Why? Like, how does that math check out? Why are we not getting as much funding as the SEC, or why are we getting a deficit to the whereas the SEC gets a surplus? It doesn't check out. The math seems simple, but it's really, I guess it's more complicated than that. And again, being a watch Doge ain't cheap. And we looked at that earlier. The CFTC, after the 2008 financial crisis, most of that had to do with the derivatives market. And that's where the CFTC is involved mainly. The CFTC Commissioner, Rostin Benham, wrote an explanation, wrote a response to Congress's decision to lower their funding. And again, he's siding with Giancarlo here. It really doesn't make sense given all the responsibilities and the fact that they're already strapped for cash in their current rules. But the fact that, again, there's new cyber threats coming out, foreign and domestic, their clearinghouses for the CFTC have to be monitored, foreign and domestic, and again, fintech is blowing up, foreign and domestic. So they're already strapped for cash. They can't really stretch those funds out anymore. So taking $1 million off the table is basically like lighting money on fire by your watchdog. So again, we'll see where this goes. But right now, not the best look for the CFTC's financing, and we'll just keep an eye on that as we go. Now for education, wrapping it up, we have stealth addresses. So intuitively, stealth addresses are stealthy, they're under the radar, they're cloaked, and this is really it's part of the secret sauce to Monero's privacy features. Another aspect of that is ring signatures, but those are also very heavy, and we don't want to go into those too much, so we'll do another educational bit on ring signatures at some point. But again, this is coming straight from Monero's website. Stealth addresses allow and require the sender to create random one-time addresses. That's why one time for every transaction on behalf of the recipient. So let's say we have an example on the next page, but again, it's between Dow and Jones. If Dow wanted to send Jones Monero, every single time that Dow sends Jones Monero, one one-time address is created every single time. So again, it's a unique aspect. It's a decoy. It's like shooting a flare up in the air, and while everybody's staring at the flare, you do a transaction on the side. This is basically what Monero does. This is basically what the one-time addresses are. And again, payment is secretly delivered to the other address. The only people that know what's going on here are Dow and Jones, the sender and the recipient here. And again, this is very technical, and we're going to dive into this a little bit right now. And there's a video that we can share and that we will share that goes, there's visuals to help out with this. So again, you can take a look at that if you want. If not, I did my best here to kind of lay that out for you. So let's get technical. There are two unique private keys for Monero. There's the view key, which again, it's intuitive. It lets you view all the transactions related to the account. There's a private spend key, which is used to spend any funds in the account, and then there's a public address. That's what everybody sees on the blockchain. The blockchain and the community, they don't see any of your private keys or your view or spend. And again, there's also public view keys, there's public spend keys, there's random data, and again, there's these one-time addresses that are public and private. And the reason that these are italicized here, these are in straight caps, you'll see on the next page, I just use this as a differentiator when we're walking through the Dow and the Jones exchange. And again, they're stealthy, so it makes sense. So Dow wants to send Monero to Jones. The first thing that has to happen there is that a one-time address has to be created, and this is a public one-time address. This is, again, the flare that shot up in the sky on the blockchain. So how this is done is Jones's public key and public spend key, well, his public view key and public spend key, and random data. I'm not exactly sure what this is. This is what was said in the video that Monero has on YouTube. I'm assuming that it's way too complicated for a beginner level, so let's just stick with random data. And that produces a one-time address that is public. And then step 2, Jones finds a one-time address. Well, he finds a one-time address that's public, and by doing that, that's accomplished with the private view key. The private view key for Jones basically searches the blockchain and matches up with the one-time address. And then after that, a one-time private address is going to have to be made. There wasn't really much detail going on with this, but I'd expect, again, it's a combination of several of these keys here. But again, a one-time private address is made, and that will connect with the one-time public address. And after that sync is complete, then Jones is able to receive the funds. He's able to spend the Monero as he wishes. And again, the account that Monero goes to is completely private from the public. You can never know who the receiver is, and Monero explains this, the advantages of this, as if you're running a business and you don't want your competitors to know how you're, A, what kind of money you're bringing in, B, how many people are sending you money. This is where Monero really has an advantage. At least that's what they argue. Though on the same side, you could flip that and say, well, what about terrorists and what about criminals? It's 100% correct. That's why so many people that are laundering money are using Monero and other privacy coins like Dash to launder money. We saw it with CoinCheck the other day. They had to remove their privacy coins from the exchange because regulators found that their systems weren't able to keep them in there. And there was the NEM hack on CoinCheck exchange in January that led to, well, half of the coins from the January hack are already hacked, already money laundered out of the system. So again, you can't keep privacy coins on your exchange if you don't have the correct systems. So again, there's a lot of chatter going on, at least in Reddit, from what I've seen, where people were wondering what's going to happen with privacy coins if these exchanges can't help them or can't house them because their security protocols or their anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist funding security systems aren't up to date. What's going to happen? And as these governments step in and realize, wait, we can't actually control, if we can't control Monero, what are we going to do? And like with Bitcoin, you can track Bitcoin. Monero's a whole other animal. So again, this is Stealth Addresses, and if you guys want to take another look, just check out the Monero blog and go on more from there. And again, that's it for today. It was a little shorter. I'm going to try to cut these down to about 25 to 30 minutes. I know that I said probably went on a little more of a rant yesterday, but again, just want to do a quick overview of today's paper. It was a little shorter probably in terms of the content that we covered right now. But again, let me know what you think. If you guys want to share this, like this, follow us on our social media channels. To Twitter, we're on the dailybit.news, or the Daily Bit News, LinkedIn, the Daily Bit, Medium, the dailybit.news. And again, if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, go to our website, subscribe right there. There's a little box right as you log on to the website. You can plug your email in there. We'll add you on. Our next newsletter is coming out on Monday. Again, thank you for subscribing. Thank you for listening. Share with your friends. We're going to get this out of our podcast later too on SoundCloud, and that'll be shared on our other channels. But until then, have a good weekend. Hopefully, if your portfolio's down, it'll go back up. And if you haven't bought Wanchain and want to buy Wanchain, then again, check out Binance to do that. So until then, thanks guys, and I'll see you Monday. All right, cheers.